I think you have to be a little bit crazy to be a freelance person, entrepreneur. I think you literally have to be a little bit insane. You decide to go down this path because something is telling you that the traditional way is not working for you. It doesn't feed your
Correct.
soul, it makes you feel crazy, or you just don't like the structure.
Hey, I'm Hannah, your host of Too Much, Not Enough. After a life-threatening burnout in 2021, I released the brittle version of success that was slowly killing me and built a life that feels as good as it looks. This podcast is for ambitious, soul-led humans ready to stop shrinking and start living big, bold, fully aligned lives. So if you've ever felt like too much and not enough, join me and my guests as we take an unfiltered deep dive into why being the real you was never the problem, and how to create a life your nervous system actually likes. Let's get into it. Let's be honest, building a business will bring you to your knees. It certainly has done that to me over and over again. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because doing it all will expose every unhealed belief, every self-doubt, every pattern you may or may not know about yourself. Today, I'm joined by the ridiculously talented Zamour Johnson, a Toronto-based director, producer, and fitness coach with a passion for storytelling, as well as one of the most grounded, creative humans I know. We're going to be talking about why entrepreneurship might just be the best and most brutal shadow work you will ever do. Zamour shares what it's been like to bet on himself again and again, navigate feast or famine energy, stay aligned while going after his creative pursuits, and what it's been like to meet the deepest parts of himself along the way. We talk about healing through work instead of hiding from it, holding your vision when the outcome is not guaranteed, rewriting narratives about success, discipline, and self-worth, and the wild, beautiful truth that you are always the business plan. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Zamour. How are you doing today?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good.
Good. So we'll dive right into it. I guess maybe we could start out by, if you want to give just a little bit of background about yourself, introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, my name is Zamour Johnson. All my friends call me Z, so you can call me Z. And I kind of do a lot of different things. I work currently in the fitness industry and in film and production. I'm an instructor at Barry's Boot Camp. I've been there now for about 3 years, which is just like kind of insane to think about. I started working there during or after COVID, like basically near the tail end of it, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't there when we were doing like modified classes for teaching, but that's how long I've been there for. And then in film and production, I've always operated in a freelance manner, but then I've also worked in like corporate environments as well as a senior producer and director. So that I've been doing for about, honestly, it's almost a decade now when I do the math, which is a long time, but here we are.
That's like when I always say to people, I'm like, yeah, I was in events for almost 15 years. And then I've had like a career since then. It always like blows my mind. I'm like, I'm not old enough
Yeah.
to have been in events for 15 years. But I also love that you have that experience between corporate and freelance. I similarly did corporate and then went out on my own. And I think it's such a good way to be able to like look at both sides of things. Amazing. Well, as you just mentioned, you've built a multifaceted creative career, really like delved into lots of different creative pursuits, spanning your directing, your producing, a little bit of influencing online, and your fitness instruction. So, how did that all evolve? Like, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you moved from corporate and why you moved from corporate into freelancing, and what kind of internal work have you found it's demanded along the way?
Yeah, I actually spoke about this the other day on my Instagram stories. I posted a poll where people could just ask me questions, and someone asked, similar to what you asked, like, how do I do all these different things? And when you talk about the internal aspects of it, something that does come up for me a lot is I'm not necessarily ever concerned about the perception people have of me. I more so think about the fact that there are a lot of people who, for example, only know me for fitness. And they know me for fitness and say, oh, you make really cool videos. Like, why is that? Right. So then there's like an aspect of it where I have to explain to people, well, actually, fitness even though it is a massive passion of mine, it's something that I do regularly. I want to say it's not my main thing because the thing that excites me the most when I'm on a roll doing it is film and production. It just so happens that fitness stuff takes up most of my life right now. So I've like found a way to kind of marry the two, like through the way that I shoot my fitness content. But in terms of how I got to where I'm at, I went to school for public relations, specifically communications at McMass University. Went to McMass University for communications, and when that was finished, I went to Humber for public relations. And funny enough, I was in like a 2 year advanced diploma program at Humber. They were known for their PR program, and at the end of the first year, I ran into a childhood friend who's older than me. So basically, I was like childhood friends with her younger brother.
Yeah.
And she had just graduated from the program, and we just like briefly met. Everything was cool, and then we went on about our way. And then before the second year started, she said, "Hey, the PR firm I'm looking for is looking to hire new people, new coordinators. Do you want to come on?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I was like, I didn't even like go back to school.
I love that.
I just got a job in the field, which was like kind of wild when I go back and think about it because I had gone to Mac, but then like I hadn't finished the program at Humber,
Yeah.
but I got a job in this field, which like made me realize a whole bunch of different things about working corporate or working in any environment. It's really experience that matters more than anything. So I'm working for this PR firm for about 4 or 5 years. And while I'm doing that, I'm also doing freelance drone work on the side, right? Like I bought a drone and like taught myself how to fly it because I was just fascinated with it. And then I started posting things on Instagram, and then people would like hire me to do certain things with my drone. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm making money. And this is kind of when digital marketing was first becoming a thing. I was basically trying to explain to the PR firm that I was working for that we need to like get into digital marketing because like this is a thing that's happening. The problem is I didn't even know what I was describing at that time because digital marketing wasn't actually a thing. I don't want to say it wasn't a thing, but it wasn't as structured as the way it is now.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, like I feel like there's this thing going on with social media and these people who are influencing people and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I think we need to lean into this a bit more. And at the time, largely because I couldn't get what was in my head out, they didn't really go for it. And I was like, okay, that's totally fine. And then what ended up happening is I started making more money as a freelance artist than I was at this PR firm. So then I said, you know what, I'm a bet on it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave to try and do freelance videography a bit more. But then what ended up happening was I got hired by an influencer marketing company.
Interesting.
This is a time I rarely talk about because I genuinely hated my time working at this company. So it's like I went from this PR firm that was like quite established,
Yeah.
and then I started working for this influencer marketing firm, which today is massive. Like they're huge. And when I joined them at the time, they were still like I don't want to say they were massive, but they were doing big things.
Yeah.
But my bosses at that time were my age. They're like my age or a year older. And it was very much run kind of like sketchy. It's run like a sketchy way. But what it did teach me was it gave me the client side's view of what it looks like in influencer marketing, right? So I was responsible for basically like working with influencers all from the States or like China and working with these massive brands to get the results that they needed. By this point in my life, this is probably when I'm like 25. I'm not an influencer yet. I'm not on the other side.
Right.
I'm still corporate. I'm still like working with people. And I had like, for example, a project with a company called Baidu, which is the Google of China, essentially. And they wanted to get like 50,000 downloads for this app they had coming out, which it was called Do Recorder, and essentially it let you screen record and live stream whatever you were doing on your phone. So they were targeting this towards mobile gamers, right?
Yep.
So remember, this is like super early influencer marketing, and I was like, okay, I know exactly how I'm going to do this. They basically gave us, I think, $200,000 for this campaign, And there's a whole bunch of like sketchiness that like I probably won't speak on. But what I am saying is, they said, Z, you got like 100 grand to work with here. You got to get these results. I was like, okay, how am I going to go about doing this? I realized that like some of the biggest streamers for video games online that had the most views were often like at that time female gamers, people who were really established. I reached out to this one girl. She had a massive following, which is crazy because her content is completely changed nowadays. But she had a massive following just based off playing games. And I said, how much is it going to cost for you to post 4 IG stories like over the course of a month
Yeah.
with a swipe up link to download? She said it'll be like $10,000. And at that time in my head, I was like, whoa, like 10 grand's a lot
That's serious money.
for something that will disappear. Right?
Yes, true.
Even though we can get the metrics to see directly like how many people have downloaded, I'm like, crazy. Like people can make this much money for things like this. And then she's like, just to clarify, it's $10,000 per story. And I was like, huh? I was like, what are you talking about? And then I said, can I see like some analytics here to support this? She
Yeah.
said, sure. This girl was getting, no joke, minimum 250,000 views per story.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
and this is like nearly a decade ago. So I'm like, all right. I go to my bosses. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. I only had a budget of 100K to work with. She was going to eat up like 40% of that. I think it was actually more. But either way, they were just like, sure, you can do this. But if it doesn't work, you're fired, right? Like, word for word, that's what was said to me. Like word for word,
Wow.
and a lot more vulgar. They're like, "Yeah, you can do this. If it doesn't work, you're fired." And I was like, "Okay, let me gamble on this." And basically, her alone, I think she got me like 80,000 downloads. So then I could pay like a bunch of smaller like creators and influencers with the remaining money I had. But like, so I'm working for this company, and then eventually, like, I no longer work there, and now this is when I go full time into freelance videography. I'm doing that for a few years, and it comes full circle because the PR firm that I used to work for hired me to do like drone work for like one of their clients who's a developer in the city, and they needed like drone videos of all their properties
Yeah.
in like southern GTA. This is early signs as someone who's an entrepreneur and doesn't know much. They said, how much is it going to cost you to do this? And I said, well, I just did the math. I was like, I think it's going to take X amount of hours at each place. And I carried the
Yeah.
one, did the two,
Yeah.
rounded the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's going to cost close to 50 grand. And I remember sending the email thinking to myself, I've never sent an email this big before, like with a number that big. This is kind of crazy. I sent the email. Within what felt like 10 minutes, they were like, yeah, sure, Dad, sign. So when I look back, I think to myself, I should have charged more because they didn't even hesitate. But what they also paid me was basically what I was making in my first year as a coordinator for them. So I was like, wow, like it's funny how these things work out. So I was doing that for a few years, and I grew up being an athlete. I wasn't really doing any athletic things while I was pursuing all of this. So I said, oh, I want to work on my public speaking. I'm going to teach in group fitness while also like being closer and exposed to the industry. It'll help with my fitness as well. So all these things, I was just doing all these different things over the years, but I like to think that they all connect in different ways. Like they all feed each other in different ways. I think my background in public relations and even working at Shopify as a senior producer, all those things tie in together. I think I'm like pretty good to work with on set or in production environments because, for lack of a better word, like public relations taught me diplomacy, right? So I understand how to navigate people I've never met before, and then also people in charged environments. I'm constantly like reading the room, whether I like it or not. That's probably a spectrum, like ADHD thing for sure.
Yeah.
Autism, like I think all that ties into it. But I was just kind of fortunate along the way to find different things that I could find a common thread between all of them, if that makes sense.
Totally. And it sounds like, I mean, a couple things came to mind as you were kind of describing your journey there, like a bit of trailblazing, a lot of risk taking in terms of what you said there, where they're like, yeah, you can do this, but like you're fired if it doesn't work out. And like you obviously understood kind of how things were working. You were clocking how
Yeah.
the online was working and how many downloads and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's a big risk. And then
Yeah.
even like you said, sending out that email and giving that quote. And I think as any freelancer or entrepreneur listening is going to understand that feeling of like being like, oh my gosh, this is an insane amount of money. And
Yep.
then whatever it is relative to what you made before or what you think the value that you place on yourself, which is usually less than what
Yes.
you probably are valued because someone somewhere along the way made you think that that was like outrageous to put that out. But then for them to come back and say yes, that feeling of A, like elation that you're like, oh my God, they said yes, I'm not crazy. But then B, of being like, wait, I should have charged more. And I think also that's like a whole thing to navigate too in the freelance world of like, where is the line? Where am I overinflating? Where am I
Yeah.
undervaluing? Also, the game you have to play with different clients because it's not as easy as just saying, or at least I've experienced, not as easy as just saying, my rate is this. Too bad, so sad, especially when, in the event world, which is, similarities to PR, where you're like, every person has a different budget. Every person has a different thing they're going for. Like, and you're like, well, do I want this job? And if I do, how low am I willing to go? And I'm very lucky. I grew up with a mom who freelanced and worked for herself. And she was very particular about not discounting her services, which meant that she did lose out on contracts. But it also meant that she got contracts that actually paid her what her value was, kind of thing. But I think there's this really hard thing that we do as freelancers is like, what is my value and how do I put
Yeah.
a dollar amount to that? Because it's not just simply the work I'm doing for you. Like you said, it's not just about you going and executing these drone shots and then, post-production of it. It's the fact that you took the risk, however many years prior to that, to teach yourself how to take drone footage, fly drones, invested your own time in that, and then taking all of your other experience with production, with directing, with even PR, and bringing that all into this moment. You create this output for this client. But I think people forget that, both as the freelancer, but also as the client. You forget that you're not just paying me to execute your job. You also paying me for the 10, 15 plus years of experience that makes me really good at this job, that I actually invested my own time and money into, kind of thing. So I don't know if you can speak a little bit to that, like the fear of valuing yourself appropriately and how you've even navigated that.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes with experience and trial and error. It's a two-sided street. Paying close attention to what people have valued your work as before, but then also knowing what your work is valued as. I think when you understand the difference between those two things, what ends up happening is you just get a better understanding of where you actually fall within the spectrum of what the value of your work is. So, for example, when I think back to the influencer side of things, I've explained this to people before. I don't even have over 10,000 followers on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
But I've managed to somehow work with brands in the past that have paid me like a lot of money for yearly contracts, right? And I think the big reason why that's been able to happen is because a lot of brands, although they do look at certain influencers for their numbers only, because they just say, hey, we need to get this out to as many people as possible. We'll work with someone who has a ton of followers and isn't problematic online. That's like the bare minimum. Then it's like easier to garner work when you have a bigger following, which then means more money. But what I learned is that, for example, a company that I was working with for a long time on the running shoe company, I was a partner with them, which was different than an ambassador, which meant that I got paid as opposed to ambassadors in different ways. But I remember meeting other people that were partners, and these were people that had hundreds of thousands of followers. And then there's me that doesn't even have 10,000. And I'm thinking to myself sometimes, like, why am I even affiliated with these people? Like, why am I getting similar things to them? And what it really came down to, and I know it's kind of like not a buzzword, but it can be played out, is authenticity, right? I would like to think who you see of me online from an influencer perspective or this social media personality, whatever you want to call it, is very similar to who you know in person.
Yeah.
So I think it can make it easier for certain brands. They're saying, oh, what I'm seeing here is exactly what we're going to get. versus this seems like a curated person overall. Because I know plenty of people who are really great on social media, and then in person, they're not awful at all, but they're a muted version of what's online. So then when it comes to the business side of things, like valuing your work, from an influencer perspective, what's weird about it is it's like the Wild West. A lot of people value themselves based on what they've been paid already, if that makes sense.
Yes, 100%.
And that also kind of plays in the freelance world as well, because when you begin, you're just kind of spitballing.
You're throwing shit out there and hoping it sticks.
You're
Yeah.
throwing shit at the wall and you're like, okay, I'm going to charge this and always leave room for negotiation in case they think this number is too much.
Yes.
And then what happens is you might say, yeah, this is going to cost you $1,000. And they say, cool, like immediately. And you're like, damn, I could have charged more. It's like every time you do this, you charge a little bit more until you find out, okay, this is where I'm capped at.
Yeah.
And then also you're reading the market. You're just seeing what's happening. I do think people should always value their own work and charge what they want to charge. But you also have to be a little bit realistic.
Yes.
And just be mindful of like, does your work actually garner what it is you're charging?
Yeah.
Right. And I think you have to be confident in whatever that is. I mean, that actually just happened this morning. Someone reached out to me a while back, basically saying they were like super, super happy with a project I did for another brand. Right. And they've seen my other work and they've seen my portfolio. They wanted to bring me on a retainer for one of their clients. And there was like maybe a couple of weeks, like nothing was really happening. So I followed up and they said they're going to put a pause on that project, but they brought something else up and they want to like swing my way. And basically it was like creating a recap video for a big event that's happening. Not something I haven't done before. I've done that plenty of times.
Yeah.
But when they sent me the budget, I think they said, it's from 12 to 5. So I got to shoot this thing. Then I got to edit and do all this.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, we have a budget of like $250, right? And the thing is, you're laughing, but like, let me just try to be serious. I know. Let me just try to be serious about this so I'm not disrespectful to anyone.
Fair,
But
yeah.
the thing is, like, I grew up quite fortunate, but I will never look at any amount of money as like nothing,
Yeah, good point.
The thing is, when I read how much they budgeted, what that said to me was they don't actually have an idea of what my worth actually is.
It's the value piece. Like you're saying, it's not just the dollar amount.
Yeah.
It's saying, do you value, do you see? Like anyone who's seen your work online, like seen any of your videos, it's stunning. Like the way you produce and storytell through visuals and through video is gorgeous. And so, yeah, I totally get that it's this feeling of like, it's not even necessarily the dollar. It's like, do you see me? And I've had that happen many times with clients who I've worked with on an extended basis. And all of a sudden I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting kind of bitter. I'm like almost like snapping back at things that they say. And I'm like, what is happening here? And then I realize they don't see me. Like I've had clients paying me my top hourly rate that I've ever had that like me 5 years ago would be like, you're insane that someone's going to pay you that. They're paying me my top hourly rate and they're treating me like a glorified coordinator. And on the one hand, I'm like, I should just take it. This is the easiest money I've ever made. But then there's this element of feeling like not seen and not used to the maximum value. And there's then this disconnect where all of a sudden I'm like, it's not even about the money anymore. It's now about a misalignment in values. I think as freelancers, as entrepreneurs, as people who are generally high achievers, high performers, that's why we go into these spaces, because we have that drive. The money at its base is always important. That's how we exist in the world. That's how we pay our bills. That's how we eat. That's how we do all the things we have to do, meet our basic needs. But it's like, I'm not doing this solely for money. I'm doing this to be in service, to put things of value out there. And so the minute that like I all of a sudden feel like you don't actually value what I have to say, there's like this disconnect that I'm like, I don't know how to move forward. I don't know if you've experienced that side of things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in this example that I gave, if I'm being so super honest, like there's a part of me immediately that's kind of offended because the offense aspect is more so, are you like actually paying attention to who it is that you're asking to do this work? because we've all heard this before. When you work for yourself, you work harder than you've ever had to work before. Because if you don't work, you don't get paid. And the unfortunate thing about what I do for a living in terms of both fitness and film and production is that I'm in a position right now in my life where I'm trying to figure out how to be a bit more savvy in the sense that I would like to make money without actually trading my time for it, you know? In the same way, everything that I do requires me trading my time in order to get paid.
Yes.
And like, even though I'm trading my time and I'm actually going to get paid more than what I did when I was working corporate, when I worked at Shopify in a senior role, I had a 9 to 5, but it's never really 9 to 5.
Correct.
And I'm making more money now working in full-time fitness, which is only 4 days of my week, than I was when I was working in this corporate environment. That's excluding like personal training, like any of that. It's just like literally just for my job alone. So I'm very big on like, what is this doing to me time-wise versus money? And there's a whole bunch of things I need to change in my life right now, like in order to like make it a little bit more dialed, but that's the number one thing I'm always looking at. So when I see someone present me with something where it says, this thing is going to be 5 hours to shoot this, and then it's going to be probably another 4 or 5 hours for me to edit this.
Yeah.
And it's just excluding like my gear, like all the things that I'm bringing, all these. I'm looking at this and I say, my first thought is, why would you even ask me to do this if you know that this is all you have, right? You could ask someone way more junior, but then I have to like check myself and remember that sometimes these people are just the mediators. They actually just may not know, just straight up may not know.
Or they may be like, I don't even want to ask this person this because it's offensive, but I have to because, like you said, my boss has said, go get it for this amount.
Exactly. There's all these things that go through my head when I think about like how it comes to valuing your stuff and navigating those awkward moments. But the only way that I've been able to navigate them is actually just by being transparent, but not in like a brutal honesty way.
Yeah.
Because like honesty doesn't have to be brutal. You just need to meet people where they're at. But even when meeting people where they're at, you still need to kind of be firm on your own grounding, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't have to people please in order to meet people where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember who it was that said it. It's like this viral video, I remember. You never met a people pleaser that's happy.
Correct.
Like, that's not a thing.
No.
You just can't be. Like, if you're people pleasing all the time, there's no way that you're actually happy.
No, because you're self-abandoning in order to people please, which is just pulling you further and further away from who you are.
Exactly. So I'm just trying to like land in a space right now where I'm figuring out just how to streamline things a bit more, because I would like to live a bit more comfortably, like
yeah,
like a lot of people,
100%.
And I think you and I are part of this generation it's kind of unconventional. We have a lot of people who are still doing a lot of very traditional things, and then you have a lot of us who are not. Like I'm probably the only one in my friend group, my close friend group, that has lived like this kind of untraditional work career my entire adult life. So it's like a weird thing. It's like a weird thing to navigate.
I would like to touch on that really briefly, actually, because I find I have an incredible close friend group who are so supportive in terms of just being like, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you. None of them have freelanced or done any sort of entrepreneurship, or maybe they've thought about it but haven't really taken it somewhere. And I find that really difficult. And I was having this conversation with actually another entrepreneur the other day, and she was reminding me of this idea that like, not everyone in your life can be everything to you. And it's like, I built a network of entrepreneurs, of freelancers for that exact reason. In the same way that when I left my long-term relationship and all of my close friends were still in long-term relationships, I had to build a community of single women around me so that I could process my real-time experiences with them. Again, my friend group, super supportive, wanted to hear about every date I went on and every story and every guy that I was chatting to. But it wasn't the same as someone who's like, yep, I also just went on a date and it was total shit, or that person just ghosted me too. And so how have you navigated that? Having friends who want to understand and are probably super supportive, but just can't possibly understand the real lived experience of what it's like to be on the fucking roller coaster of being a freelancer, of constantly being faced with your own self-worth, value, having to almost defend or promote that, having to then just constantly be skill building and wondering if it's going to be feast or famine, all those things that come with being a freelancer, being an entrepreneur. How have you created communities that help lift that up for you?
It's kind of similar to what you just said, actually. I found people who are doing similar things to me because, like your friend said, everyone can't be everything. Some of my closest friends, they have no idea what it's like to freelance.
Yeah.
But I know what it's like to work in a corporate environment. There's always going to be just a little bit of a disconnect because even then, I do pride myself on having friends that aren't stupid. They are incredibly smart. They can, like, guess what some of the things feel like. But I have to find like-minded people who are doing similar things, who can understand the conversations that I'm having so that I don't go insane. Like, it's as simple as that, right? Because quite often, I know you've definitely thought of this. You will have moments working in freelance where you say to yourself, like, why am I doing this?
I literally had that this morning.
Yeah, like why am I doing this when I know the job market right now is kind of crazy, but
Yeah.
it's like I've worked corporate before, I've worked a stable job. I could just go back to doing that. I think you have to be a little bit crazy to be a freelance person, entrepreneur. I think you literally have to be a little bit insane because when you think about all the things that you do not get, you don't get paid if you straight up don't work. But I remember working corporate knowing I can mail it in a day or two in a week. I'm still going to get that paycheck every 2 weeks. I mean, look, obviously you and I have worked as freelance entrepreneurs for a while, so we know ways to do it. But it's like you don't get insurance, you don't get
Correct.
vacation pay. Like there's all these things that you do not get that aren't structured for you that you now have to structure for yourself. So it's like you decide to go down this path because something is telling you that the traditional way is not working for you. It doesn't feed
Correct.
your soul. It makes you feel crazy, or you just don't like the structure. For me, I don't like the red tape and I don't like the corporate diplomacy. I've never liked it. And what I mean by that is like I don't like how long it takes to like get certain things done.
It's insane.
I don't like the meetings on meetings on meetings. It's like, why are things not getting done? Because we've had 12 meetings today. There's so many things that I don't like about it, which makes me feel insane, which is why in my life now, I do too many different things. I do too many different things because I have ADHD and autism. But it's like, I need to do these things because it's the only way that I can stay sane. But then what comes with that, like you said, is this weird navigation of, how do I like relate to people? How do I get them to understand what it is that I'm going through? And it's just trying to be as transparent as possible, relating aspects of what I do to what they do. That's kind of it. That's pretty much how I go about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like the things you talked about there are so real. Like, if you don't work, you don't get paid. And you're often working all the time, like to build the business or to build your skills, that no one's paying for that. I mean, yes, it can result in a higher rate in the future because you bring more knowledge and more experience to a role, but you're doing work all the time, you're getting paid. And often when you're not working, you're thinking about how you can expand your business, grow. Like you never turn off. You're going to bed thinking about it. You're waking up thinking about it. You're trying to watch TV and then you're thinking, like, it is nonstop. And part of that I love because I love the innovation. I love the challenge and all of that. There's always those pros and cons, but you've got this, like, you can manage the structure better. You can maybe be more authentic and less in the bullshit. But then, yeah, you don't have a guaranteed income. It can be feast or famine in the sense that you're like, if I don't take these 4 jobs at the same time, I don't know when the next ones are going to come. So I now know that my next 4 months are absolutely fucked. I don't even possibly know how I'm going to fit all the work in, because I also don't know that in 4 months, it might be another 2 months before I get something. So I kind of have to say yes now, which is a whole thing that I've worked on myself in like building up my nervous system capacity to be like, I don't want to be miserable for the next 4 months. So I am just going to be okay with losing this chunk of money, which can sometimes be very hard to say goodbye to, and just be like, I trust that it will be better, that I am not absolutely miserable and overworked than, to have this extra amount in my bank account. But that took me years and years and years because my brain couldn't comprehend why I would say no to like that many zeros. And then, like you said, no insurance, no guarantee, like all these things that come. But then I think there's a deeper layer that is also all the personal work that you have to do. Like as I'm
Yes.
building Soma and a personal brand and coaching and all of that, which is a departure from what I did before in event production, I'm facing shit in myself that I thought when I went out on my own 7 years ago, I already moved through. And now it's like this other layer of like, I'm the one who's in my way of my business growing, which is like, I think the biggest thing as a freelancer and entrepreneur, which sucks, is like you realize, oh no, I'm the one. I think like I'm so great, but I'm the one slowing this down.
It's like, oh, am I the problem? Like,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
And literally, and then you're like, how could I be the problem? I'm creating all of this. I'm like in it every day. And then you're like, oh shit, oh, I'm a problem. I've realized lately, I'm terrified of selling my services, which sounds so bananas backwards because I'm like, but that is why I rebuilt a new business, is to sell these new services that I feel so connected to and I'm so good at, but I've been hiding for the past, because if I don't put 100% of my effort into selling, then when it doesn't sell, I'm not a failure because I didn't try hard. So it's just like, all that's to say, I just think that there's like not only the more practical elements of working for yourself, but then there's this like deeper, you have to face the shit about yourself. Like you said, am I the problem, to then get those blocks out of the way? So like, what do you think has been your biggest internal pattern or shadow that entrepreneurship has forced you to face in order for you to grow?
The thing that I've been forced to face the most from like an internal perspective is staying comfortable, which is interesting because when I started, a lot of what I did was risky. You know, I left a lot of stable things. I left a lot of comfortable things to be risky in order to build something for myself. And I did that for so long that I then valued stability. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
there's like this constant back and forth of saying, I want more time to do the things that I want to do. I want to create a lot more things for me. I want to work on my YouTube. There's all these things that I want to do, but I can't do it because I'm too busy like working all these other things because we live in a capitalist society and I need to pay rent, like all these things.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, what ends up happening is I say, I just want something that's stable and pays me money. Like, you know what I mean? The thing is, I'm in a stage right now where I'm saying to myself, I need to get back to being a lot more risky because that's what got me here.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm facing internally is feeling a little probably jaded, if I'm being honest, like being jaded by all these industries that I've been in.
Yeah.
And how you're just kind of at the mercy of like the waves that they are. You just never know where it's going to take you sometimes, which is why I think a lot of us go into freelance work because we think, well, at least I'm the one paddling this boat.
Yeah. I've got a little bit of control.
I've got a little bit of control. And it's weird as you say, I've got a little bit of control, but the waves are so crazy at times. Then you go back to saying, hey, that giant boat over there that's not actually mine might actually be a little bit more appealing. So it's like, yeah, I'm, approaching my mid-30s. I would like to think I've done pretty good for myself. I think I crave stability so much because I think what it will do is bring a level of peace to my life in general that I actually want. But I don't really know, like when I sit here and really think about it, I don't really know for sure that stability will bring that for me.
Right.
I think what will actually bring like the peace that I want in my life is being able to create and do the things that I want. Saying it out loud, I know that the only way that I'm going to get there is by being a bit more risky with some of the things that I need to do. Like on my desktop right now, I have like an invoice open that I got to send later. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, I need to do like a rebrand for my logos and everything. Like I've had the same logo for nearly a decade for my work. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I gotta like switch things up again. Maybe I gotta like put myself out there from a service perspective as well. Cause I don't really do that. And the reason I don't do that is because I'm comfortable with other things I have going on in my life that are providing me with income and stability.
Yeah.
And they just so happen to also be things that I like as well. So it's like fitness, for example, will always be something that I will keep and want to do in my life. And I don't ever see that changing. But because I have worked hard enough in this industry to get myself to a position where I've got a great schedule, I teach a lot, I'm trying to get better at it. I'm comfortable. Like, I'm comfortable. And what that's done is it's kind of stunted my propensity to take more risks when it comes to my creative work. And I've thought about this, and I'm saying it out loud to you right now. Is like I could realistically say, make a couple posts where I'm actually selling my services as a videographer and editor by saying I'll offer like anywhere between 2 and 4 videos a month at a fixed rate price. Like, if you want it, here it is. Like, and the thing is, there's no real reason why I can't do that. Like, I'm saying it out loud, and I'm like, what's actually preventing me from doing this? Like, is it time? I don't have all the time in the world. Very true. I do work a lot, but if I really wanted to kind of get myself to a position where it's like I have X amount of money saved up and stocked up so that I can dedicate more time to the things I want to do, for me, it would make sense to kind of grind it out for a little bit and then put hard caps where I say I'm only doing this from this month to this month,
Yeah.
because I kind of thrive off of the pressure. Once again, it's a spectrum thing.
Yeah.
But that's what I've been like forced to deal with the last like couple years. Once I find a state of feeling comfort, I kind of stay there. And not in everything I do, but I will stay there. And it's like, this isn't really like serving me long term.
But do you find though that that is a feeling that comes up at a certain point, almost like you're going through seasons where you've gone through this
Yeah.
like big growth, and
Yeah.
then you do get to a point where like you do deserve to maybe stay in comfort for a little bit, maybe build up your resources again,
Yeah.
focus on something other than taking risks all the time growing, and then you start getting that like itch again to be like, okay, it's time to grow again. Like I even look at that with when you think about like the healing journey, of personal growth and personal development. I feel like there are these like growth spurts, and then there are these almost plateaus. And it can sometimes feel wrong, for lack of a better word, to sit in the plateau, to sit in the comfort, because you think about it when we think about like working out, it's like you hit a plateau, you're done, you're not growing, but it's like, but maybe I grew in order to be able to rest for a little bit. And then I get that itch again to be like, you know what? I'm ready. I did the big thing. I took a break. I say break as in you're not actually taking a break because you're still working hard. But I sat in the comfort for a little bit, like reaped the rewards. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to ascend to the next level. Because if we were just growing all the time, I think you miss actually sitting in the fruits of your labor, of actually
Yes. Yeah.
enjoying where you've come to in terms of, like you said, started berries a few years ago. And now you're in a place where it is paying the bills nicely, and that you have, worked on your public speaking. You have a lot of like, from what I can see on social media, a lot of like loyal followers. I don't know, of like people who come to your classes a lot and love your classes because you really push them in the same way that you push yourself. And that comes out, like you talked about authenticity earlier, and I know you said it's a bit of a buzzword. That's what attracted me to you in the first place, is the fact that you are just like, see what you get, and you're not gonna like beat around the bush when it comes to like telling you how it is and the things that you're frustrated about or the things that you see. And so, yeah, I wonder sometimes if like those moments of comfort are built in.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That if you don't have, they're not like down moments. Like if you don't have the time to actually enjoy what it is that you've built, and you're constantly growing, then there's no awareness for the difference between the two. I think for a long time, I've just been go, 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 go. That when I would get those moments of comfort, I would just stay there because I was like, oh my God, like
You need a break. You're
in
exhausted.
a routine. Yeah, so I think where I know that it's become a problem is a strong word, but where I know it's become a bit of a problem is when the weeks go by so quickly because of my work schedule. Does that make sense? It's like
Yeah.
time just seems to fly so quickly because of how things revolve around my work
Yeah.
and my work schedule. And there's an aspect of that that I just really don't like because,
It's like life's passing you by almost.
yeah, like it feels like, okay, it's just another week, another week, another week, another week goes by. And it's cool when you can stop and like have moments where you do fun things. You spend time with your friends and family, you do all these things weekly, You try your best to. But sometimes I would love to have that exact same feeling of, oh, the weeks just went by with things that I actually love and enjoy doing as well.
Yeah.
It's weird that how that only comes up for me when it revolves around work. But I do agree, it is something to like really consider, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Well, unfortunately, we have to start wrapping things up, which I don't love because it feels like we're sort of just getting into the juicy part. But what would you say to someone who is listening to this and they're like, I feel really drawn to like building something soul led, but they're maybe paralyzed by some of their shadows, like perfectionism, like pressure, like lack of self-worth, fear of being seen. You seem to have almost had a little bit of that built into your personality in terms of taking risks, of being able to be seen, of being able to go out there and put yourself out there without necessarily it being a conscious choice of like, this is the direct trajectory I want to go on. You kind of followed what pulled you, and then it led to this being able to look back. What would you say to someone like that who's like, I think I've got something here, but I'm like, I can't move forward?
I would honestly say you have to get behind the idea that you're going to be like your biggest fan and biggest critic. And the earlier you understand that, the easier it is to actually move on the things that you want to do. Because I learned very early on, nearly 10 years ago, that you never know who is watching. And that can sound scary if you choose to look at it that way. But the truth is, you just really never know. And I tell people all the time that a lot of the work that I make or put out on social media for myself, not what I do for other people. Because when it comes to working for other people, it doesn't really matter if I like it or not, is if they like it.
Exactly.
Right? So, like, one, understand that right away. Two, when it's your own work, I've explained to people that maybe like a week or two later, I don't like 90% of what I've made. And that's largely because there's time in between that project. And I think to myself, oh, this is what I would have done differently. I would have done that differently. I would have changed this, blah, blah, blah. That just means I'm growing. It means that I'm gaining knowledge and I'm understanding things a bit better. But the truth is, let's say it's a video or a project or an event that you've hosted. You might not have liked 90% of it. And therefore, you trick your brain into thinking that if I didn't like this, they didn't like this. And it could have been the complete opposite. They could have loved 90% of it and hated 10% of it. I think about in the context of videos that I've made, someone might watch something and say, yeah, the overall video was okay, but there was like a 5-second part in this video that let me know I want to hire you for a particular project because of what you did. So you have to get comfortable with just putting yourself out there. And this is something that I'm reminding myself because it's what got me to where I'm at now. I came from a time where I would just post things on social media without really caring about numbers, comments, share. Like,
that's kind of the perfect place to be in, where you're like, you think no one's watching.
yeah, I literally used to just create things and just post them and then move on. The joke that I remember from the sports world is like, you need to have the mind of a goldfish, where it's like, forget about what happened in the last play. Just move on right away because that already happened. You can't control it. So as I say all these things out loud, it's a reminder to myself, but it's also, I think, something that everyone needs to hear when they think they want to go into something that's soul-led. You need to have the mind of a goldfish. You need to understand that you are going to be your biggest fan and your biggest critic, and you never know who's watching. So just put things out there. You literally never know.
I think that's such perfect advice of like, especially in this day and age where so much gets created, there's such a volume, and it's like, that's part of what, especially in an online situation on socials, you have to put a lot of volume out there. You don't have the luxury of like perfection, and things cycle through so quickly that like that goldfish mindset, I'm adopting that for sure, of just like, forget about it and keep moving. And like, you will never feel ready. I waited for so long to feel ready to call myself a speaker, to call myself a coach, to start this podcast.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a moment where you're like, great, I've built everything up. I've built every skill I need. I've got the perfect logo. I've got the perfect intro. I've got the perfect whatever formula. Now I can put it out into the world. That all gets sorted out as you're doing it, as you're driving the piece forward. And so if you wait for the perfect moment, it'll never come. And you may be 80 years old looking back at all the things you regret not just going for. And it's funny, I did an episode a few months or so back called Creating from Your Authentic Frequency. And one of the things on that was like the kind of 4 things in order to come back to yourself and create from that place. One of the things was you have to be cringe. You have to be cringe. Like you have to put stuff out that you're going to look back on in a couple of years and be like, ew, I cannot believe I put that out on the internet. That's so embarrassing. You might even want to delete it, and maybe you will, but it's like no one started being like, I'm amazing and no one's judging me.
I literally have to send you this right now because I saw this a while back and I'm like, this is literally what it means to like, here, let me go to studio chat.
Yeah. So basically, Z just sent me a picture that it's like this idea on the left side, results on the right side, and this like gap between it. And the one on the top is like being cool, and the one on the bottom is being cringe. And it's like the only way that you're going to walk across from idea to results is by being cringe. It's not by being cool. It will never be by being cool. And like, if you're waiting to be cool, which trust me, I waited a long time thinking once I'm cool enough, I can do this thing. It'll never happen.
It'll never happen. The truth is, like, everyone is cringe to someone. You know what I mean? We're all cringe to someone. I don't even want to think about the amount of people that may think I'm cringe, but I also don't really care. I think it's funny, like, when you understand that people will just naturally always have different perceptions of you than you will ever think that they have. There's people who I've met who I'm like mad cool with now that have told me that before meeting me, they thought I was like too cool to have a conversation with. They thought I was a bit like a fuck boy, like based on my social media. And like, you know what the funniest thing I ever heard? It's like, I remember this one girl who like I'm cool with now. She said, yeah, before like we ever had a conversation, I thought you were a fuck boy. And I was like, for what? And she said, Zamour, you're a man on the internet with his shirt off because you were just fit. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I get it. I was like, that makes a lot of sense when you explain it this way. But it's like, these are perceptions I have no clue about. But if I spend all my time trying to curate the perception people have of me, I'm not even going to know who I am.
Who you are, 100%. And it's so funny because I met you before I knew your online persona. So I know you, and like, I would never, ever, like, I didn't even think about categorizing you as a fuckboy until you literally just said that. And I was like, yeah, I could see when people see you online. And also, like we talked about earlier, the stuff you produce, the quality of stuff you put out there, the like moody lighting and everything is very cool. It's very aspirational, which I think is an important part of creativity. There's an aspirational component to it because as humans, we always want to be growing and evolving, and that's how we connect with things. But I could see how people would be like, well, this guy's too cool. But once you meet you, you realize that you're just like so human. And like I said, the reason I felt connected to you at the beginning when we really started getting to know each other was like, because you would like bitch about things that I was like, oh my God, I'm always frustrated about this stuff. And he's finally just talking about it without like worrying what someone's going to think and not thinking that it makes your whole personality because you're frustrated about X, Y, Z or whatever. But this whole cringe thing, I think, is the access point to anything that you want to do in terms of betting on yourself and going after your dreams. And you cannot spend time worrying what people, I mean, it's natural that you're going to worry about what people think about you, but it can't stop you because usually if someone thinks you're cringe or something that you're doing or the way you're acting is cringe, it is 90% of the time because they actually want to be more like that and they dislike or are worried or have shame around that element. You're like a mirror to them. I think anyone who looks at something and is like, oh, that's cringe, I can't, because I've done it. I've unfollowed people on Instagram because I'm like, this is too much. Knowing that like a year later, I follow them again and are like, this is exactly what I need because they were a mirror at the time of a thing inside me that I had shame about or that I was like, oh, I can't act like that. And then later you're like, oh, I've healed that part of me. Now I'm like, this person's the shit. I love what they're putting out there kind of thing. So, all right, I do this thing on the podcast where we do a little bit of a rapid-ish fire questions at the end. So I am going to throw them your way, whatever first comes to mind. And it's always ish because you can expand on it a bit if you want to. But what is something that you used to hide about yourself that you now lead with?
I don't know if I would say that I lead with it, but that I'm on the spectrum for sure. Because I think that informs people as to why I make the decisions that I do and why I do a lot of the things that I do, right? And also to kind of like dispel any of these myths around what that actually looks like. I like explaining to people in more detail what it actually means and what it looks like to have ADHD. I think these conversations are important, you know? So yeah, I'll probably say that would be it.
1,000,000%. I remember one time you were talking about the fact that when you go out with friends, there are times where your social battery just like immediately dies and you have to leave. Otherwise, you're going to be like unpleasant to be around. And that
Yeah.
was the first time I'd ever heard someone else say that in a way that like healed that part of me, because I would go out with friends. I'd go way past my boundary and I'd be like, I'd lash out because I was overstimulated or whatever. And I'd be rude or mean. And especially when alcohol was involved. And you like gave me this permission to be like, oh no, you can just leave.
Yeah.
By
I
the
was,
way, like
yeah,
that's
you
okay.
just bounce. Like you can just leave and it's like actually better for everyone. You know
Yes,
what I mean? Like
exactly.
you get to go home and eat some food or like do whatever, chill,
Be alone.
be alone, and like they get to keep having fun. It's like a win-win. So yeah.
Exactly. But I imagine it was such a simple truth to you at the time that you had come to terms with. But I needed someone to say that, almost to give me permission to be okay with that part of me. So I totally agree with what you said about like normalizing through sharing and leading with that. What is something that you think the world needs to hear right now?
I would honestly say, yeah, that we need to be a bit more kinder to ourselves. And the main reason for that is, you know, a lot of my life revolves around movement, somatic stuff, like which I know you can really appreciate. I just think that of all the things that I do want in this life, luxury, peace, like whatever, I think more people need to understand that like your body and your mind are the things that are going to stick with you the most, hopefully. So you can't be like saying all these mean things to yourself. You know, you got to be a little bit kinder to yourself. It really does show up in ways that you don't even know until it's too late.
I love that because your thoughts create your reality, and that includes your thoughts that you have about yourself. So beautiful. And I do think it would change so much if we were kinder to ourselves and able to release some of that shame, because then that radiates out to your community. And that could be the like point that starts the change that we want to see in the world in general. Okay. And finally, where can people get more of you?
You can follow me on Instagram at Topboy, TOPB0Y, and then very soon my YouTube as well, same name. But that's pretty much it.
Amazing. Well, as always, we'll have those links in the show notes for anyone listening. Please go follow Z. Like, honestly, his content is beautiful, not just from a visual perspective, but also from a storytelling and just message perspective. It really is real and true to what we experience as humans. So thank you so much, Z, for your time. Really appreciate you being with us today. And I hope you enjoy your weekend.
No, I do. Thank you so much. I love this. Definitely do it again.
I would love to.